Welcome to the Mystery Channel. We're back, Morgan and Björn, and we're talking about, like we talked about Madame Lenormand, but we're coming into the modern times, and tips, tricks, all the great resources, including, interestingly, your books, which is actually where I started on my journey. So how did that come to be?
Well, how did that come to be? You know, the content of the books already existed for like 10 years before they were published in English, because they were my old courses, which I taught, old school in a classroom with people. And after that, my courses somehow converted to a book. And then at one time I published them in English, which is very a strange thing to know, since my books in Dutch, they are far from a success, and my books in English, they are really like almost best-selling level, since they are the amount of books I sold is really bang out of order. Never really expected that. So thank you for everyone who bought my books and supported my work. But that's somehow how it came about. They are really my courses, and I think that you somehow get the feel of that, because what I hear from people is that they are built up very with a structure in that regard, a good structure that really goes with certain levels. Where you somehow evolve to the next level. At least that was what I wanted to express, and somehow it's how I for myself needed to grasp the whole system. So I somehow made a blueprint of my brain in the book. So that's how it came about.
So, and then, because you said it came from courses, so those were courses you taught?
Yeah, those were all separate courses, since I've said this before, like here, because I live in Belgium, so in Belgium, Holland, so we have a Dutch speaking part in Belgium. Historically, we were one and the same with the Netherlands, so we talk Dutch. So my courses in that regard, they somehow, since I also lived very close to the border, to the Dutch border. So I live in a very geographical, interesting place. So I drive like 50 minutes that way, and I'm in Germany. I drive like 50 minutes, or not even, maybe 10 minutes that way, and I'm. So I got a lot of people from Holland and from Belgium, and I was like teaching, all those courses separate, but because I always saw it separate. So for me, that's a strange thing when I somehow came in the Anglo world, the Lenormand world, which was actually the previous terror world, because in the Anglo world, and especially America and all that, terror is very big. So, and all of a sudden there was somehow a new hype, the Petit Lenormand, that was maybe about like 2010 or maybe something earlier afterward. And there was always a strange fact that people called themselves traditional readers, and they somehow were like reading the Petit Lenormand outside of the Grand Tableau. And I very strange always, because here we see it like, okay, traditional reading is reading the Grand Tableau, only the Grand Tableau with the method of distance. That's traditional reading. And from the moment that we take the cards outside of the Grand Tableau, it's somehow a modernism, but I don't mean that in a pejorative way, because that's also a very good thing to do, because I used it back then when I was still reading cards. I more used the cards outside of the Grand Tableau than inside of the Grand Tableau, because that's also more practical if you just want to have one question. If you go to the doctors and you say, I have a sore throat, you don't go under the x-ray. So you just focus on the area of your throat. And that's also the same how I was thinking about those cards. So I thought that always separate the Grand Tableau, so traditional reading, and outside of the Grand Tableau. And that's also how my books are somehow structured. So in one part you learn those cards, but I started from more the modern approach, because that's what people were used to do, because they were okay. You learn each separate card, and then you learn how to read two cards and three cards, and then you somehow add up until the Grand Tableau. So I did it the other way around, as I have it in my head. but that's also to somehow make manageable chunks for the student.
Yeah.
But I always had a tendency to teach that separate in that regards. So then, when I wrote the books, I just had to see what fits with each other, and yeah, then I make it in a book form. So first of all, I did the modern reading, which is the book, the part one. That's here.
Oh yeah.
So where I explain each card separate, and then to as much as possible cards with different layouts. And my second book was like the method of distance. And my third book is like something, yeah, it's separate thing. It's about love and health and all that, but that's something separate. But I always saw those things apart from each other, whilst they are, of course, in one framework in the end. But that was also how I taught those courses. And then people somehow, yeah, read some other books, German sources, or they were taught by other readers back then, and then they came to me for a course and they, okay, this is interesting, so I will go back to the method of this. And so I always were able to somehow kindle the passion for the traditional reading style, because not many there was this Belgian lady, Erna Droesbeke, famous abroad. She was the first one, I think, to translate a work into English, and it was about the method of this. But with all respect for Erna, she really did not really master the method of distance. She somehow made the little white book, the booklet that goes with the cards for like mid 19th century. She somehow, some finding student, and that was that. But that was not that was still very fraction. And but since I always like traditions, I like to go to the core. I like to go, okay, how was it intentionally meant? For me, that's a very important question. And not that I want to be ultra conservative in that regard, no, because there's a big paradox. If you want to conserve a tradition, you have to be somehow more progressive, but not progressive for the aim to be progressive. Then there is no really measurable progression. But
Yeah.
I really want to know, okay, how was it then? What is the sense? What is the core meaning of what's the flavor of it? That's for me very important. And I always succeeded to, if I had people in my room, to kindle that, because there was no really, people, well, a lot of those books, like from Erna and other people, they somehow called or talked about the method of distance, but it was really fractionized. They did not made it in a way that people really could work with it, and that's where I think I made a huge difference in that regard. And I did a lot of field study, a lot of with old cartomancers and asking questions, and I had also a member back a mentor back then, someone who was really famous in cartomancy, not per se a Petit Lenormand reader, but she was very much into the Tarot Marseille, and we somehow exchanged. And I got to met this lady who was back then already in her mid 70s, and I learned a lot of her in regards of the practice of the business in general in that regard. But she was also the bridge to other traditional, or at least people with a certain age, who still had somehow, who could tell me a lot about how it used to be. So I really visited with her a lot of those old readers, and that was really great, because I could somehow, be several people at the same time. I can't be an enthusiast, I can't be an anthropologist, I could be so many things. It's very holistic and layered, but that's also in the books, because in the end, somehow, if you study things from the past, you have somehow you have to connect the dots, and in order, before I wanted to connect the dots, I really needed to do all that research. Also, there are so many things who are important to get a good grasp on that. For instance, folklore and all that, and what all those emblems and all that symbology. It's very important to somehow know it all, to try to transfer it to the people. And I did my utmost to do that in those books, and I hope I somehow succeeded in that regard. But I never expected that it was such a success, which again, I'm very thankful for everyone who bought my books and all the good recommendations. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I like the books since those are where I started because I like the structure that you start with the core meanings and really work your way through it so you're not overwhelmed with all of this information at once, all the words at
Yeah,
once, all the ways to read it at once. Because when I first
yeah.
started, that was what tripped me up is that they just dumped everything on you at once and you're like, now what? you know?
Yeah, it's very yeah, it's chaos.
Yes, yeah, very bird
So, and
energy.
do you have some go-to techniques from the books, or do you have
Yeah, well, my favorite thing from the book,
what did
especially if
you
you
get out of the books?
oh yeah, no, like I said, the books were really what helped me, really learn, the skills of Lenormand. I'm sorry, really learned them, and I liked where you started making your own deck because with the core words and the inserts, because that
Yeah,
really helped focus in what they meant as you read through the cards, even in method of distance, the cross spread. It really kind of honed
yeah.
in just those three little core words on how to start reading it, so
Yeah. Okay,
yeah,
that's great to hear.
that's how I like to,
And the thing
especially.
with the inserts for me was very important to have somehow a first impression. If you know that there are a lot of that your significator card is surrounded by a lot of clubs, for instance, that does not bode good, and you can see it
Yeah,
right away. To somehow that people have that feel right away. Also in reading, because you can say that okay, you're surrounded by a lot of space, which paradoxically, in comparison with other playing card cartomancy systems, is a very good sign. But that's because it's somehow derived from German cards. But that's a whole different story. I also explain it in the book. That's not relevant today. But for me, it was important to really have that playful first glance of it in order to somehow, yeah, also provide you with something to say to the sitter right away. Because you can say, okay, I see that you're surrounded by spades, and that's blah, 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 blah. And then you somehow explain the card. That's also why I did it. Secondly, it's also because in the end it's a linguistical system, so it does not matter how the look is of your anchor on the cards or your fox or whatever, even though I can really appreciate good artwork in that regard, but that's not important here because the fox is the fox and the tower is a tower, whatever it. If you want to do it traditionally, and I don't want to be someone who said, "Oh, you cannot do it that way." No, I just give what is somehow the convention about traditional reading, because there will be a lot of people about who really somehow let themselves inspire by the images on the cards. That's good in its own right, but we cannot say that this is really how traditional cartomancy is meant to be. And I don't say, listen to me, I don't say that's not a good way to do or whatever. No, it's just to somehow with respect of the real art in that regard. So
yeah,
yeah, and
I,
that's what for me was very important back then, because I think that we somehow it's like an immaterial heritage. That's the way how I see it, and we somehow have to yeah, not to add on too much stuff in order to keep it pure. But that's my personal view, and that's what I think I expressed in the books. And if someone thinks wholly different about, that's up to them, and they can publish. We live in a free world in the end. That's which is a great thing.
no, and I like that because it gives you a more structured, clearer view of what you're looking for in the spread, what your answer is in the spread. So kind of anchors the reading.
Yeah. And that was somehow, yeah, what I wanted to express. I wanted to make it, also this, because let's call a spade here. From the moment we start with cartomancy, people somehow find, okay, I have to have special gifts in order to read cards, which is not true.
Yeah,
I find, because the very first accounts of cartomancy were very like ladies in court, they would see which king or which knight they would encounter just by throwing those cards and looking at the image. Okay, it's like black hair or blue eyes and all that, just in a very playful manner and read it. And that's something I also like to express, and that's also, because there is also this wink with with traditional cartomancy that often it was also seen as a parlor game, as something to have fun with. But of course, you can look at it in a different way. But that's also something, yeah, which we have to be aware of, I thought,
Yeah.
to keep it very playful.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Especially you're saying with your books too, how you're saying because you don't have to be, medium or anything because it's very logically written, and especially with card combinations, the card because a lot of times that's what people like, more tips
Yeah.
and tricks from your book. What people do is they'll just focus on one card, one card, one card instead of creating that sentence. Because that's where you're going to get the most information is creating that sentence or
Yeah.
card combinations.
Yeah. And in that regard, somehow I don't know why it is, but Petit Lenormand has something magic. And a lot of those old, how do you say it? There is also a division in it, how you could say it. Well, yeah, cartomancy decks, but help me out on this one. So because we have some also semantics between Europe and America. So let's at the convention that a tarot deck is a deck with 78 cards. We call that a tarot, but there are always buts, but we will talk about that in next episodes on regards to the tarot. But you have like cartomancy. But yeah, how do you see cartomancy in that regard? Is that just with playing cards? Because here, tarot is also cartomancy. And cartomancy is more like the act of reading cards is cartomancy in general. But I often read that, in the Anglo world, and especially in America, if you talk about cartomancy, you are reading like playing cards. And if you're reading tarot, you're reading tarot. Yeah, and then we have also the division in oracle cards or whatever, you're like Kipper, Petit Lenormand, Jeu de Destin, they are often here called oracle cards. That's also semantics with the Anglo world, So
Yeah.
yeah,
That,
we have to
yeah.
we have to somehow make new, I think, not
Yeah.
to send people astray.
No, it's
So there
true.
are a lot of different, very interesting, soothsaying cards or whatever you call them. Yeah, but the method of distance, the Kipper cards are also read in distance, and
Oh,
there
yeah.
are a lot of other playing card oracles work with distance, and distance is also something very logically, very playful in regard of other sorts of divination with chicken bones or whatever, or with dices or whatever. It's very simple, very playful, and that's also why it's so great. But I think a lot of sideways, but there is something really magical about the petit. Yeah, and I don't think it's even hyped. It is not hyped. That's something special since I really made that evolution because like for like in America and all that, and outside of Europe, except for Russia maybe, but Petit Lenormand was what was not known, what was already that was not existing somehow. And then from like 2010, it really got started to grow, and that was just the time that I somehow found my way to the international scene.
Yeah.
So I really saw it on my eyes develop and growing like that. And then all of a sudden, everyone was into Lenormand.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the strange thing is here, like I think like maybe like in Belgium, we had a lot of really big cards like in the 19th century, and so Belgium was very famous for their cards, as famous as they were in Marseille or somehow in Swiss. But somehow, that's also something from the 1900s. It seems like the Petit Lenormand cards were so famous here, so popular that they somehow in the minds of most people that this was a tarot. Can you imagine? So if you go to the library, or if you will go to a bookstore, you have also that weird that weird place in the books shop somewhere behind with esoteric or spiritualism and all that. And you would find much more books about Lenormand than tarot. No, when I
Oh,
bought my first book in that regard, I really thought it was a tarot. So what do you know? If you don't know it, you just say, okay, you have something in your mind. You read cards and tell the future. Okay, let's go for that. And a lot of books are, oh, and you think, yeah. So no, I don't even know how we get there,
no, yeah,
but there is something magical about those
yeah,
Lenormand system images that really clings to a lot of people.
yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah,
it is a logical thing though, because like, logically getting here, like you said with the tarot stuff, because a lot of people do try and read Lenormand like tarot. They try and, they don't realize, like you're saying, distinct systems instead of just reading everything the same. It is distinctly read differently. There's different rules, different structures.
yeah. And I don't say that you can't read it or you should not read it that way, but I actually want to say, if you really dive into how it is meant to read somehow, yeah, you will maybe experience or find new ways to give those cards more depth, and that's somehow
Yeah.
the message here. So I will not tell anyone how to read it, and I will say to everyone, don't let them too much tell you what to do. So I have a very rebellious mind in that regard. But in the end, it's also up to you to somehow see, okay, are there other ways to do it? Are there better ways to do it? Can I improve? Can I go outside of my comfort zone? I
Yeah.
think that it would be valuable to make a decision in the end that you know of that system, and then you can somehow compare it with whatever you do, and then it's up to you to decide. But just to say, okay, I just use my intuition and I read it the way how I want it, okay, that's your choice, but maybe you miss out on a lot of maybe.
Well, that's so kind of see the way I always like to start at the basics, because then you have your structure. Because if you know how to read it, like this is just my tip, and know the structure of it, then that's when you can build off things. Because if you're just gonna jump, like you said, into a card of the
Yeah,
tree and decide what, read it how you want, you might miss out on what it's actually telling you. Like, oh, it says, because it's a health card. So if you're ignoring the health issue and thinking everything's gonna be fine, that's why I like
yeah.
to learn the basics first, to learn where it came from, how to structure it, and then, build off of it, how you personally put it into practice.
And there is yet another thing to it. Yeah, so you're right there, Morgan. But it's so much layered that if you read like three cards, you can really pull the sitter into the reading by pointing out what's on the table. I like that way of reading, but I think that was something I did for myself in order to substantiate what I was reading, since I did not want to be the oracle. I I read an oracle. For me, the cards are somehow an oracle. So I find that too much of a task to be an oracle. So later on I find out that I really want to substantiate what I was reading, that I was not crazy. And then you can somehow pull the sitter into the reading. So you say, okay, here is the fox, and the fox is always mischievous. So there's this mischievous energy around you, and we have to see, okay, here is the house, and it's coming from your house, and then you have like a story, and people can somehow see that. And I got a lot of good comments on that, because they say, okay, now I understand it. And
Yeah.
never underestimate the power of an image. An image can say much more than 1,000 words, and that's really true. So if we can have it both, and we can pull people into the reading by pointing out how it is, that is such a value for the understanding of their situation. So that was for me yet another thing to do, why that's so important, of course, to just read it traditionally and read it how it is. And then you often encounter, that there is like a string of cards, and then you're looking at that, and then you can, yeah, because there's also something logically. Somehow we seek logic, and then you are tend to somehow say something that's logically due to the situation of the sitter. But there you can go very much astray. And if you just read in a playful manner whatever's on the table, how crazy it might sound,
Yeah.
that often is bang spot on in that regard.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, that's also something you have to be courageous to do so. And for me, that was always why I said, for what it's worth, I read it in a very playful manner. And that's also why I always say that, but that's for me, people. That's for me personally, and you don't have to follow me, but that's how I think about cartomancy in a philosophical way. And for me, I think the most brilliant phrase in a book of cartomancy is somehow in the little white booklet of the Piatnik cards. And herein is something like, okay, cartomancy is meant for amusing purpose, something like that. But you might be surprised of how accurate it can be. But it's due or up to the listener or the sitter how much value he or she gives to the information that you receive from the cards. And I think that's something really, really brilliant. And that's something what was the core of my understanding of cartomancy.
Yes. Oh, sorry. My phone camera shut off. Yeah, I know. I like that. And that is a great way to look at it. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's also, I think, why for me that was so important to somehow, see myself as a traditional reader. But for me, that was not a choice of a certain flavor in that regards, but that was something which fits how I am and how I look at the subject of cartomancy, so that I just read those cards for whatever that's worth.
Yes.
And yeah, that's also why I was somehow, very fond of traditional cartomancy. Since, because that was structured, that was playful, that was the way it was, and you somehow, for my feeling, could somehow substantiate what you were saying by pointing out what's on the table. Okay, it might sound crazy, but here it is for what it's worth. And I really liked it. So I was never attracted to somehow read cards like in tarot, where you use your intuition and somehow say what you're feeling is about the card, and you say so. And I'm not saying here, people, that it's not a good way to do, but either way you can give brilliant information or give utterly bollocks. That's how I think about it. So, but for me, it felt much more logically and much more easy to step in that regards of traditional cartomancy. So yeah, that's also some people think often that since I am somehow abroad very well known for being a traditional reader, but that's why that's the why behind that. Not that it's a taste or maybe I do like things who are traditional, and I like traditions, and I like to know what's the core, but I'm also not against progression, because if you want to keep a tradition, you have to be progressive somehow. But if cartomancy for me only was looking at a card and then listen to my feelings and express what I felt by that, I would never have been interested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I'm not against that, because the sitter, he or she should not care. He should actually, I find, somehow, step into the situation and be open for whatever he or she receives, for what that's worth.
Yeah. No, so I like that.
That does not have to be a clash of styles, but since somehow, the question here, or underlying question, is why are your books so structured? Why are your books so much emphasized on traditions, on research? That's the why. That's the why. Because then for me it was manageable to do something mysterious without me thinking, hey, you're crazy.
No.
That's awesome, Jill.
And it's
Yeah.
more validating too, the way you do it.
Yeah, you know what? It's flavor. It's taste. And the French say le goût et le couleur on ne discute pas. So they say the taste and the colors we can not discuss about because it's subjective.
Yeah. Yeah. That's for how people read, yeah. But it's a good place to start though. Really good place to have that structure first, like you were saying.
Yeah, you know, yeah, maybe not. That's also how you look at things, of course, but also how what your idea is about cartomancy and whatever you do. So and yeah, and a lot of people have a very good intuition on their own. They use somehow cards like to I don't know to somehow inspire them, and they need that sparkle, and then they take it over from there. Well, that's good and it's all right, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think, and not to being brutal here or whatever, but I don't think that is really cartomancy, because in the end, cartomancy is reading cards, whatever is on the table.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree.
So it
And
also would be interesting how the people or the listeners think about that, you know, and maybe they can change my mind. I'm not like some rigid thinker in this regard, but that's also, and I know that this is really subjective. And in the end, I know whatever you read with whatever device, you know, in the end, it's valuable in its own right.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Especially, yeah. No, I agree. And that's why I like though the cartomancy, and what they do choose though would be validating to them, of course, because that's the thing with that, is that it's going to say what it says. Because I know a lot of times people want the nice answer, or how to get past something, or making it like more flowery. And sometimes things are going to be bad. Like embrace that, badness, so you know how to move forward instead of
Yeah,
just looking at the good things in the cards, the good stuff,
yeah.
that's
You
how to
know,
get through something.
yeah, very much. You know, and if we then go back to where we started somehow, the 19th century, you know, and late 17th century, you know, where cartomancy became a thing, you know, with Etea and Madame Lenormand, you know, and especially Madame Lenormand, you know, that was also really an experience. Can you imagine? You step over a portal, you come into a totally other world. You are somewhat anxious because you will find out about your fortune. But you know, you really step into an eerie environment with mirrors reflecting strange stuff. No, put it out there on purpose in order to make an atmosphere. You know, but can you
Yeah.
imagine in that time? So it really goes further to just reading those cards on a table. You know, that was
Oh,
really like a life-changing experience, which
yes.
somehow, since I am a hypnotherapist, you know, in regards of, you know, bringing people in a certain trance, and they are like in a trance there, because they have a genuine focus on what what the situation will bring there, you know. And even if you like, from the view from a hypnotherapist, do some tell some stuff, you know, and that you somehow have a self-fulfilling prophecy in that regard as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But then
Oh,
also,
yeah.
you know, it's very playful if you look at the system of Petit Etea, you know, you have like, but because the combination of cards is somehow with Etea somehow kindled from there on, and you could read,
Yes.
okay, your jacket is stolen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and much earlier cartomancy with those fortune books with cards inside it, and that you have to throw some dice and then look up the page with a certain card, and there will be phrases like "you will get drunk and lose a tooth" or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you also have to see where it came from.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah. Because that gives you the more of a structure too. That's why I like that.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's also, I like to look at things, yeah, very layered, in a holistic way. Because if you
Yes.
say holistic, people think about health, but holistic is that you somehow, yeah, that you recognize that it's very much layered, that it's a structure of a lot of things together, and that's also why it's really great to look at Cartomancy, for instance, philosophically, or yeah, like an anthropologist and all that.
Yeah, that would be like that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Like
So
that
that
thing.
we will do a lot of stuff about that, and that's also interesting to, if yeah, how people will react to it. So if and what people can add on what we are saying already, and maybe we will find out in our community a lot of stuff we don't know yet, Morgan.
Oh,
How great would that be?
yes. Yeah. Because it is, yeah, because it is interesting to see people from different backgrounds, how like a psychologist would decide to use the cards in their practice versus like an anthropologist or sociologist or
Yeah.
it people in the healthcare even on how they use it. It's I always find that fascinating that the people's backgrounds like that and how they have their profession shape how they're going to use the cards and how they speak to them.
To your vision on life in the end,
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
So that's interesting. So in the end, to round it up, that's also which something I want to encourage people. Make your own style, be authentic,
Even
especially if
yeah.
you do something in this, because this, what you still do, you're a great cartomancer. It's a creative profession. In the end, you're an artist, I find.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's because it's a yeah, because you can use the cards however, they call to you, but I still use them in the same like from your book. Even though like if I use it in astrology, I'll lay the cards on a person's birth chart, but I'm still going to use those four things and how it speaks then to the birth chart.
Yeah, my
Big
mentor,
picture.
used to do perfect, just the same as you do.
Oh yeah.
And she had like the year wheel in astrology, and then she was like in the house and laying cards, and she would use like the tarot de Marseille, but also on top of that Lenormand.
Oh, see, that would be fun to both together because
Yeah.
with the tarot, like the tarot, or even the Lenormand too, they speak to houses, like the flowers or Venus. So where would
Mhm.
that be? It's all interconnected, like you were saying, using it holistically like that to be able to
Yeah.
make those connections.
Yeah, and we will make a lot of of connections, because if you say so hearts and you say Venus, then I right away think about the chalice and the cups on tarot and how they somehow came about from the mystical idea that your heart was a vessel.
Oh, I
But
do like that. Yes.
we will talk about a lot of stuff in that regard.
Oh
I
yeah.
would say people follow us, like
Yeah.
us, give us a comment, reach out, because you definitely want to be part of our community, and we want you to be a part of our community, isn't it, Mark?
Oh yes. Lots of fun, exciting stuff ahead.
Okay, see you next time.
All right. Thanks everyone.
Bye, thank
Definitely
you.
comment.